We are now officially less than a month away from election night, and the presidential race is shaping up to be an absolute nail-biter right now. It's anybody's game, with both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris having strong paths to victory. According to Polymarket, a popular prediction market where people literally bet money on political outcomes, Trump has a slight edge with a 52% chance of winning. In other words, if we could somehow hold the election 100 times, Trump would win 52 of those times. On the other hand, Kamala Harris has a 47% chance, meaning she'd win 47 out of 100. That leaves us with about a 1% chance that something completely unexpected could happen, some kind of wild card event that could change the course of the election. These odds are deeply tied to each candidate's chances in key battleground states, which are the real deciding factors in this election. Polymarket runs individual prediction markets for each of these crucial states as well, providing a detailed view of how people are betting on the state-by-state outcomes. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the odds in these battleground states and share my thoughts on why they're rated the way they are. It's important to remember that prediction markets like Polymarket often turn out to be more accurate than traditional polls. Polls, after all, only capture a moment in time. They show what people are thinking when the poll is conducted, but prediction markets go a step further. They reflect the collective judgment of people who are willing to back their opinions with actual money. That skin in the game tends to make these markets more grounded in reality. They don't just reflect what people hope will happen, but what they genuinely believe will occur, often leading to more accurate forecasts. So let's dive in, starting with the safe states where either Trump or Harris is all but guaranteed to win. These are states where each candidate has more than a 95% chance of winning, meaning there's very little doubt about the outcome. Well, before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Why for Kamala Harris, the so-called Pacific Blue Wall remains solid. States like Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii are deeply Democratic, and they've reliably voted blue for decades. In fact, this will likely be the 9th consecutive election cycle where these states go to the Democratic candidate. Harris can also count on Colorado, which has become one of the most reliably left-leaning states in the country. Then there's Illinois, another safe Democratic stronghold in the Midwest. Moving up to the Northeast, Harris is virtually certain to win New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. Joe Biden carried all of these states by at least 15 points in 2020, so they're considered locks for Harris this time around. Harris also has a 98% chance of winning Maine's 1st congressional district and, of course, the District of Columbia. D.C. is so overwhelmingly Democratic that it's not even included in most prediction markets. And there's simply no competition there. Democrats have always won D.C. by enormous margins, often by more than 50 points. Now let's look at Donald Trump's safe states. He's almost guaranteed to win in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah. These states have been reliably Republican for as long as most of us can remember, and that's not expected to change this year. Trump also has a firm grip on Nebraska's statewide vote and its 1st and 3rd congressional districts. Other safe Republican states include Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Lastly, we have Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia, all of which are solidly in Trump's column. Like Harris, Trump carried each of his safe states by at least 15 points in 2020, and there's little reason to think he won't do it again in 2024. So if we fill in the electoral map with these safe states, we get an interesting picture. Harris jumps out to an early lead with 191 electoral votes, while Trump trails behind with 122. At least 225 electoral votes up for grabs in 17 more competitive states, those battlegrounds that will decide the election. Next, let's move on to the likely states where either Trump or Harris has an 80 to 95% chance of winning. These states strongly favor one candidate, but there's still a small chance for an upset. For Kamala Harris, one key likely state is Minnesota, where her running mate, Tim Walz, serves as governor. Minnesota has been a Democratic stronghold for more than 40 years. If Harris wins the state, it will be the 13th consecutive election cycle where Minnesota goes blue. I'd won Minnesota by 7 points in 2020, and the markets currently give Harris a 92% chance of holding the state in this election. However, that 92 figure might be a little optimistic. If we look at the current polling, Harris is leading by less than 5 points on average, with individual polls showing her lead as narrow as 3 points. Based on that data, I'd personally rate her chances closer to 80, putting Minnesota in the lean category rather than likely. It's still very likely that Harris will win Minnesota, but it's worth noting that the race could be tighter than people expect. Another state that's likely to go blue is New Mexico. Biden won New Mexico by 11 points in 2020, and Harris is heavily favored to hold on to it. The prediction markets give her a 92% chance of winning the state, which seems accurate given that Harris is currently leading by more than 8 points in the polling average. 2 of the last 4 polls show her with double-digit leads, so New Mexico feels pretty safe for the Democrats this year. Harris is also likely to win Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. This district is interesting because while Nebraska as a whole is deep red, the Omaha-based 2nd district has been trending left due to a growing population of college-educated voters. Biden flipped the district by 6.5 points in 2020, and Harris is currently favored to win it again. Next, let's take a look at Virginia. In 2020, Biden won Virginia by double digits, and while this year's race is a bit more competitive, Harris still holds a solid lead. The latest polling average shows her ahead by about 4.8, and the prediction markets give her an 88% chance of winning the state. That feels about right, although it's clear that Virginia could end up being a little closer than expected. Finally, Harris is likely to hold New Hampshire and Maine in New England. These are the only somewhat competitive states in an otherwise deeply Democratic region. Biden won New Hampshire by 7 points and Maine by 9 in 2020, and the polling suggests Harris will win both states by similar margins this year. With those likely blue states covered, let's turn to Trump's likely states. First on the list is Alaska, where Trump is almost certain to win. The markets give him a 91% chance, which makes sense given that Alaska hasn't voted for a Democrat in more than 60 years. Trump's 10-point margin of victory in 2020 was the narrowest for a Republican in decades, but Alaska is still solidly Republican overall. In the Midwest, Trump is also likely to win Iowa and Ohio. These states used to be considered key swing states, voting for Barack Obama in both 2008 and 2012. However, they've shifted hard to the right in recent years, with Trump winning both by at least 8 points in 2016 and 2020. Washington markets give Trump a 93% chance of winning Iowa and a 92% chance of winning Ohio this time around. Trump is also favored to win Maine's 2nd congressional district, which is one of the most rural and predominantly white districts in the country. He carried it by 7 points in 2020, and the prediction markets give him an 82% chance of winning it again. He's moving down south. Florida is another state leaning heavily toward Trump. Florida has long been one of the quintessential swing states, but it's been moving further and further to the right in recent years. Trump won Florida by 3.4 points in 2020, and the markets currently give him an 86% chance of winning it again. Florida's 30 electoral votes are a huge prize, and Trump is in a strong position to keep the state in the Republican column. Then there's Texas, the 2nd largest prize on the electoral map with 40 electoral votes. Texas has been trending leftward in its urban areas, but it remains a solidly Republican state overall. Trump has an 89% chance of winning Texas, which gives him a slight edge over Florida in the prediction markets. However, his polling lead in Texas is actually narrower than it is in Florida, which suggests that Texas could be more competitive than people think. With these likely states accounted for, Trump's electoral vote count rises to 229, putting him just 7 votes behind Harris, who stands at 226. That leaves 93 electoral votes up for grabs in the remaining battleground states, the ones we've been watching closely all cycle. Now, let's talk about the truly competitive states, starting with Arizona. Arizona is currently considered a lean Trump state, with the former president holding a 67% chance of winning. Arizona was one of the closest states in 2020, flipping blue for only the 2nd time in 70 years. Biden won it by a razor-thin margin of 0.3, thanks largely to the rapid growth and diversification of Maricopa County, which includes the Phoenix metro area. However, Arizona remains fundamentally Republican at its core. Trump is leading by 1.4 in the polling average, and the prediction markets are reflecting that advantage.